Might not be a survivor.
Okay, good morning.
Good morning, Cindy.
I am about to pour some tea. So I'm just pouring a relaxing tea for today, some chamomile tea with honey. This is a new one that I got from Argentina, someone from Argentina who actually has a tea plantation there. So it's really good. They've already infused the honey flavor in the vanilla in the chamomile. So
Oh,
hope you have something there.
that sounds delicious.
Mm. Thank you. It's great. So here we are again. We've had a lot of great conversations.
We have. You were one of the first people I shared myself with, besides the regular medical people, about a month after actually my diagnosis, my lumpectomy, my radiation was all over in 30 days.
Wow, it's hard to believe all of that is encapsulated into 30 days. When you look back now, what would be the main general thing about your life that changed? Like, how was your life before diagnosis versus now?
Well, before then, I was just rocking along, enjoying my life, feeling blessed in all ways. And, once you have cancer, I mean, that's just colors everything,
Mm-hmm.
everything, everything. From my relationship to my husband, to my children, to my grandchildren. But, for right or wrong, this is how it came down. Had a bad mammogram on the 2nd of September, 2020. And on the 4th, I had a biopsy with the surgeon. And I think I had my lumpectomy on like the 12th of September.
Mm-hmm.
And right after that, maybe a week or two later, I started the radiation, which was 5 days, twice a day. And so October 2nd, I had my last meeting with the radiologist. And what I remember saying is, I can't believe this actually happened to me. It was so fast.
Mm.
All of a sudden, it's over, more or less. I mean, the treatment part of it is over.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, oh, well, then you need to go see Cindy if that's how you feel.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that's right. I do remember now that's how we got together. Although, of course, as I said then too, that's perfectly normal. It goes so fast, you can't really register or review it, as it's happening sometimes. And then you're left in this aftermath. Like you said, like what just happened? What did I go through? So that leaves a lot of emotions too, right?
But I feel really badly because since my diagnosis, I've gone through this with two other friends, one a particularly close friend, and she was waiting like 6 weeks for each appointment.
Mm.
I mean, it was just kind of unbelievable the way the surgeon treated her. And it was so painful because it went on for so long, and then she didn't get clear margins. So she had to wait like another 6 weeks before the surgeon could find time for her. It was just horrible. And so when I've seen these horrible things, I realized how really lucky I was that everything went so smoothly.
Good point. Yeah, each experience is so different, but I do see the benefit of that perspective. Do you remember the actual diagnosis that day, that moment?
It was stage 1.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Estrogen, progesterone positive, HER2 negative.
Mm-hmm.
And I got clean margins on my lumpectomy, and my sentinel node was negative.
Okay.
So, and I think it was like 2.5 or 3 milligrams.
Or millimeters. Yeah.
Millimeters.
Yeah. And when you heard that information, what did it mean to you to hear those parameters?
Nothing.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know what it meant.
Mm-hmm.
But, I went home and I looked everything up. But then the hard part was getting an appointment with an oncologist, because they kept referring me to this oncology group, and they kept not returning calls and not calling me. So it took me another month before I got to see an oncologist. I mean, the whole thing was so rude. I mean, really rude. And when I did, she said they were going to do this oncotype test, and that would determine the future treatment. And I, of course, kind of sat there and thought, well, the treatment is over. You know, I'll try your pills, but I've had the radiation. And from what everybody has told me and everything that I've looked up, that's all I need. And so I went back to see this oncologist a couple of weeks later, and she came in and she said that my oncotype number was 51. And I said, that can't be. That's just unbelievable. It can't be. I mean, I was completely out of my mind. It was so unbelievable. And I was actually sort of shouting, it's just not me, not me. And so then she got sort of upset and she said, well, is your husband here? And this is, of course, in the middle of COVID. And I said, yes, he's in the car. So they went and got him and he came and sat with me. And the two of us sat in her office for 45 minutes. And we had all kinds of jokes. He said he was going to shave his head. And, you know, we went through all these things. But she actually was ready to make an appointment to put in a port.
So just for the audience sake, whoever might be listening, a 50 score of 50 would mean you need chemo. So
well, at 50, I would be practically teeming with cancer.
Yeah, well,
I mean, anything over 20 is a chemo thing. So she came in after 45 minutes and said, the lab has made a mistake. And they have reversed 2 numbers. She said it was not me. She was very specific to say it was not me. It was the lab. And she showed me what they requested and then what the lab had produced.
Right.
And it turns out that 51 is an impossible figure. And it was actually someone who had uterine cancer.
Oh, so that's why. Okay. So, you know, this is the part of the story, your story, that I do remember so well, almost viscerally, because I remember speaking with you and thinking, my goodness, we have something in psychology we call healthy denial, and we all have it. You know, like you're sitting in an airport and they say, oh, your flight is canceled. And the first thing everybody says is, no, like that can't be. You know, that's our first response is denial. It can't be happening. But for something like you needing chemo or having such a high onco score, you're not even expecting anything else. You believe you've been done. And she says that a lot of patients will have a secret feeling like, well, they got it mixed up. That's probably not my score. But you were so sure that it wasn't, for intuition, for whatever reason. And this is 1 in a million where actually it wasn't you, which is flabbergasting.
Well, I was just feeling sort of trapped at the moment that they were actually going to start doing something before we'd really check this out. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, I was afraid she was going to put in a port. I was afraid she was going to give me something. I mean, she was dead set on, you know, that she was right and I was wrong and I was losing my mind. I was, actually.
Well, it pivots on that score, you know, and so I can understand why you would feel trapped, because all that turned everything from day to night. That score now determined her actions. So, wow, what a feeling.
So they sent it and did it back again. So another 3 weeks later, I went to see her. And my oncotype score was 9, which is very reasonable.
And that one you accepted.
I did accept that, you know, that's what it should have been in the first place. You know, the surgeon had told me everything was okay. The radiologist was, you know, very positive about my treatment, about the 5-day targeted radiation. And where does she get off coming in with this? I'm sorry, I shouldn't make a joke.
But that's an emotional feeling. Well, we're only out smiling and laughing now because it's way in the past. And, you know, and to think about it, I also remember discussing the fact that there obviously is a place for human error, that even though it's a lab test, somebody inputting the numbers either on the computer or by hand transposed two digits, right? So there's room there sometimes for human error.
But I was so shook up, it took me weeks before I got over that.
Wow. Wow.
I mean, it's either your life is fine or your life is really, really in a hole.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Did it cause you any distrust otherwise? Thinking, I wonder about
Yes.
other, okay. Mm-hmm.
Yes, I looked at her with a lot of skepticism from there on,
Mm-hmm.
mainly because she was so wanted to be so convincing it was not her fault, and it probably wasn't her fault. But on the other hand, she could have looked more carefully at a test like that is so antithetical to everything that my other results in my chart had shown.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean?
I do. That's another good point, that taking into account the other factors, take a second look,
Right. Take a second look.
Mm-hmm.
So actually, we didn't last very long.
Mm-hmm.
She and I changed after about, I don't know, 6 months or so. I forget how long. And I didn't stick with her very long.
And I want to get into that because I want to get into the idea of advocating for yourself and how it actually is not that easy changing doctors or finding another one. But I just want to back up for 1 second. If my memory is serving me correctly, somebody had told you in the very beginning that you just had a little bit of cancer.
That was the surgeon.
So that was before surgery.
I mean, when I went in and he told me that it was a positive test, and he had told me the first time I saw him when he did the biopsy, he said, "Oh, I don't think this is cancer. I think this is going to be fine." Mm-hmm. So I went in, and I wasn't totally convinced that he was. I was still nervous about it. I mean, I didn't take that as a good sign particularly. And he said, "Well, it's just a little bit of cancer. There's no such thing as a little bit of cancer. You either have it or you don't. And if you have it, you're marked for the rest of your life."
Mm. Mm.
You are. I mean, everywhere you go, you have to say, "Oh, I had breast cancer. Oh, I have lymphedema. You can't take my blood pressure in my right arm." Oh, oh, oh.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes, I do. I wonder if that was meant to minimize it in a sense, not so you wouldn't be as concerned, but for a discerning person, you either have it or you don't. It has consequences, right? So, yeah.
Well, he didn't know me. I mean, he didn't know me. This was the first time we'd met.
Okay.
So he didn't know me.
Yeah. Huh. So it's just so interesting because the experience of getting a diagnosis of breast cancer becomes colored by all these other aspects of how you're told, the testing, the mishaps, it's enough already, but then you have all of this to deal with as well. So you decided to change doctors, and how did that go?
Terribly. It went terribly. I decided that, I started out on letrozole, and that really made me uncomfortably ill. So then I went on Estetostan. I think that's how you say it. And that was better. Mm-hmm. But, after the mistake, I just didn't like her. And our personalities absolutely did not mesh because she's a cold fish and I am really a people person. Mm-hmm. We just didn't, it was not. So I decided, I looked through all of the online profiles of people that are in this cancer group that she was in, because it's a huge group, huge, gigantic. And I found somebody I thought would be nice. So I called up and said, "I'd like to make an appointment with this doctor." And they said, looking at my chart, I guess, say, "Well, you're a patient of Dr. So-and-so." And I said, "Well, I would like to just see this other doctor." And they said, "Well, you can't." And they said, "If you want to do that, you have to declare that you are no longer a patient of Dr. So-and-so," the first one. Mm-hmm. And then you have to submit your paperwork to the new doctor's staff to see if you would be an acceptable patient. Mm-hmm. I gave up. That was ridiculous. So then my primary physician knew a someone he'd gone to medical school with, who was an oncologist, who he thought was really smart. He said he knew all the answers to everything. And he had a clinic, he was part of a clinic down in Lake Worth, which is not in my neighborhood, and the hospital would not be in my neighborhood. I mean, nothing about it was right, but my primary was pretty impressed. So I called up there to make an appointment, and they said, well, you'd have to send us your information and we'll evaluate it and let you know if Dr. So-and-so can see you.
Okay.
And this took 12 weeks.
Oh, goodness.
So when I finally got the appointment, I went down to this place in Lake Worth, which is this huge clinic, and it had sick people every place, just every place in the waiting room. And I waited for over an hour, and then I went to see the lab people, and they took blood, and I forget what else they did. And then I went and sat some more, and I didn't see him for over 2 hours. When I did see him, he was really busy. I got like 15 minutes. He was very nice. Just don't get me wrong. He was very nice. So he put me on tamoxifen and said, come back in 6 months. So I said, okay. And so I did that. And then I started getting all these lumps in my breast. And my breast was really painful. So actually, I went back at 3 months. It was hard to get in. They didn't want me to go in, but I got in. I said, listen, my breast is killing me. So he felt my breast and he said, oh, this sometimes happens. Discontinue the tamoxifen and come back in 6 months. I said, okay. So I went home, but it really hurt. And so I talked to you, and I saw a lymphedema massage specialist. And then I thought I should talk to the surgeon. So I called the surgeon's office, and they said, you can't talk to him. And I said, why? It's only been 1.5 years since my surgery. They said, well, he's gone with Tampa General, and he's now an emeritus doctor, and he does nothing with breasts anymore. I said, you're kidding. No, they weren't kidding. So I never got to talk to him. So now I have no surgeon. I have sort of an absent kind of oncologist. I had you, that was good.
Thank you.
And so I went to the radiation place, but the doctor that I really loved, he was gone. So there was this new guy there who was about 25 years old. And so the person that really saved me actually was the nurse practitioner in the radiologist's office.
Okay.
And she was the one that kind of got what was going on. And so she found me a surgeon. So I went to see the new surgeon, and she kind of went over everything, and that was nice. So I said, well, I don't really have a team. She said, well, we're going to get a team. I mean, because you could see everything was off. The surgeon was off. The radiologist was off. I fired the oncologist.
Right. And, this brings up self-advocating in a big way, because already you were self-advocating, but now you're really in a situation, right?
So I liked the surgeon a lot. She was new to Good Samaritan, and she wanted me to see a different oncologist. And I think she just wanted me to be seeing somebody up more in my neighborhood.
Okay.
And so this thing on my breast got worse. I mean, it was worse. I was going to the lymphedema therapist, and I finally went down to Plantation or wherever my old radiologist was, and he said I had radiation redo, which is all the symptoms of radiology come back, and that was what was wrong with my breast and the scar tissue and the pain.
So some women do get lymphedema. This is actually more than that, right? This is different.
it's different because I never had the arm involvement that other women have. Mine was, either in my trunk or going to my back.
Mm-hmm.
But we were able, I think, with the all the massages I had, all the treatments, to really contain it. And I mean, I just felt like I was floating in, I don't know what. I didn't know if I had more cancer, with all these lumps and pains. And so the new surgeon wanted me to change oncologists. And I thought anything would be better than the office at this other new ones.
Mm-hmm.
So now I'm going to someone I like very much. She's young, she's new, she's very I feel like she's interested in me,
Mm-hmm.
which is important.
Very
And
important.
she doesn't put off, questions.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I got sick again, if I'd want to go to her or want to go to someone who is more experienced, but for the time being, she might be that experienced. I don't know, but she's, came here from Northwestern, where she did all of her post medical degree
Okay.
stuff. And
Right.
she's in a very reputable group. The group has been taken over by Tampa General.
Okay. And so now the issue with your breast is resolved?
More or less.
Okay.
It's a lot better. I went to your massage person, but she doesn't take insurance, and it was getting expensive. So I found someone who was actually very, very good at Good Samaritan. I understand she's left now. Her name was Amber. And I went to her for 4 or 5 months. And she really got it going. I mean, she really got things, so that it didn't hurt. She softened up the cording in my breast, and I was not in pain. And then the radiologist had also told me to wear a sports bra to bed, and just to prevent my breast from falling onto my chest, to make a little ledge. And so I'm still doing that.
So through all of this, I mean, you mentioned your husband, coming in, even it was COVID time. So he came in when they thought you were going to have chemo, but you've had a lot of good support through all of this, family, your husband, friends. Have you had
family more than friends?
Family more than friends. Okay.
It was really funny after I started the radiation. The first time my husband drove me, it's not that far away, but he drove. So he sat there while I had it. And then I was going at 9 and 3. So we get home about 10:30. And so in the afternoon on the first day, I said, I can drive back. So I drove back and I came home, and I was kind of tired. I think it was more emotional than anything. My son called. And he said, well, did Dad take you to radiation? I said, well, he took me this morning, but I went by myself this afternoon. And he got on the phone with Tom and just blasted him. How could you let our mother drive herself? But it was just the way they were all so caring. And they all kept, saying they'd like to come down. And I really didn't want him to come. I just wanted to sort of get through,
Through it.
Okay. Just wanted to get through it.
Yeah, it makes sense. They say, I know you heard it so many times, try to keep life as normal as possible and then get back to normal life. Yeah. Is any of that possible? Is there normality in your life, or is it now more, quote, normal? How do you assess that?
My life is normal now because I've come to some conclusions with your help, actually. And I think one of the best things I did was to go to your breast cancer support group, because I got a feeling of what other people were doing. And I can tell a difference, because last year my younger sister was diagnosed with breast cancer.
Okay.
And she was diagnosed I was 78, she was 75, I think, last year. And she's had a much tougher time than I have emotionally. Well, first of all, she's not married. Second of all, my nephew is a recovering addict, so her life is not great anyway. But she just doesn't, I don't know, I can't explain it. It's just, I was much better off than she, and I'm much better off now.
So for your sister and so many other women like her with a new diagnosis or still going through it, is there any one or two pieces of advice that you would offer?
Well, one of the things I would keep telling her to do is to stand up for herself.
Okay.
That when she goes to see her oncologist, she should be, don't just say, oh, I don't feel very well. She needs to say, my bones are killing me. You know, I can't sleep at night. I have terrible hot flashes. These pills are giving me brain fog or whatever it is. I mean, but she needs to get right out there and say what's going on. I mean, it's just like I am not taking tamoxifen or anything else. And so I have really faced down everybody because, you know, everybody says you should be taking medication.
Okay.
Well, I went back on the tamoxifen and I got the lymphedema back. So I took that off. So I stopped taking that and I just decided I'm 80 years old. I love being 80, by the way. And, you know, my quality of life is important. I have a great husband. I have great kids. I have a lot of friends. I'm busy all the time. And I've just put it behind me. You know, I go to my appointments, you know, 6 months to the surgeon, 6 months to the oncologist. You know, my last mammogram was clean. You know, I just hope for the best.
How long has it been since your diagnosis then? What are we looking at now?
September 20. So it's not that long. It's 22, it's like 2.5 years.
Okay.
So I'm nowhere near being a survivor.
Well, you know, the National Cancer Institute says as soon as you're diagnosed, you're a survivor. So that's their new definition. But, you know, we could talk about that too. Do you even like that term? Does that register with you? No.
No, it makes it sound like I need to be rescued or something. And I don't really feel like that. The thing I have noticed is that everybody in the medical field for cancer seems to be on the same playbook. And I would say, oh, yes, she looked at page 19 and decided that was me. And that's the advice I got. You know, I just felt like everything was very quantified and not particularly individualized.
That's such an interesting observation. Go ahead.
But, you know, I think the reason I feel like that is because I think I'm older.
Okay.
If I were 65, I might not take things with a grain of salt. Because my chances of reoccurrence would be so much higher.
Okay. See, that's the perspective that, you know, that's important for all your decision making is your sense of where you are in life and what in the quality of life that you want versus
right.
Right.
But really, since I've been off all these pills, I mean, my hair has grown back and it's gotten, you know, more like itself. And, you know, I have a lot of back problems, but I don't have achy bones. You know, I don't have.
Go ahead.
I'm just pretty cheerful.
Yeah, you are. You're very cheerful. You know, so for I love the thread of self-advocating, being honest, upfront about what was happening, being interdependent, reaching out for help when you need it. To me, there are so many things in your experience and story that are very useful for other people to see. And I'm wondering if maybe the piece of advice or something, I'm sure there are more than one, that you'd like to leave the medical establishment, but I think I heard it already. And that is that even though it has to be standardized to some degree, of course, also have some individualization, right? Try to tailor things for that particular patient. Maybe more conversation about it even.
Yeah, I finally got the surgeon to see it my way, and
Mhm.
it's taken almost maybe a year since I've seen her, maybe a year and a half, for her not to say at every meeting,
Mhm.
I want you to take some kind of an aromatase inhibitor.
Mhm.
And me saying, the first time I said it, I had a mask on, so she couldn't really see my face. I said, I'm 80 years old or 79 years old,
Mhm.
and I'm too old.
Mhm.
I'm doing this my own way. And she'd say, and then she was shocked because she didn't see my whole face. She just saw me from the eyes up.
Huh.
79. Wow.
Interesting. Well, we have about 7 minutes left. Is there anything you'd like to say as far as another area that um, it's very common in general to say that after going through an experience like this, there's a flip side. There are actually benefits and opportunities that you wouldn't have otherwise had, but you can only really realize those when you're out of the trauma, away from the situation. Would you say that you have anything like that you recognized?
Well, I feel like since I've been through it, since then, I've had like 3 or 4 friends who've been diagnosed with breast cancer, and I think I've been able to be positive with them about going through their journey.
Mm-hmm.
And with my sister,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not so particularly positive with her because I can't get her to move. I can't get her to do anything that I think she should do.
Yeah.
The
But it's
bossy big
given,
sister.
yeah, I was gonna say that's a sister thing. But you definitely, now you have something, a way to reach out to other people. So one benefit from going through it is that you now have it at your disposal to help others because you truly understand the relationship. I mean, in the group, you're very helpful to the other women there. And that's what that's all about, is a shared experience, because and someone else who's read about it or heard about it or helped people with it, like myself for cancer for years, our credibility is a lot lower, than somebody who's gone through it like yourself. So I think that's really nice.
Well, I think the group really helped me.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when there were some times when, it was really me talking,
Mm-hmm.
for a good part of the meeting, because
Mm-hmm.
I had things that, especially around changing oncologists, that is like the worst
Mm-hmm.
thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no way to really test it out beforehand. You just kind of get assigned to someone,
Mm-hmm.
more or less.
That's
You
right.
just get referred down the line.
Mm-hmm. And you're going
So
through a lot of emotion at that time too, like you don't even know. Do you have the wherewithal at that time to interview different doctors and make your
no,
choices? You're in fear, probably.
yeah, you just wanted to get it. I don't know. You just had to go through it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, I have enjoyed so much being there beside you when I was, over the period of time, as you've gone through it. I've enjoyed our conversations. And today, I really enjoy doing this where we're summarizing it, looking back on it with a different perspective because you're past it, but looking back and getting a synopsis of what happened, where am I? I just think that that's so helpful for somebody who's coming along, to see the bird's eye view that you have.
On Facebook, there's a group. I don't know what the name of it is, but
Mhm.
I get posts from it. And usually somebody is in a lot of distress.
Mhm.
You look at it, and I look at it, and there's 35 comments.
Mm.
So you go down and you read the comments, and you realize how helpful people are to each other,
Mm.
even though these people are in, really dire circumstances. And one of the things you really helped me with was not feeling guilty because I wasn't as sick as so many other people in your group.
Yes, that is a
That's
really. Mm.
very hard to get past.
Mhm. Mhm. It brings us back to the little bit of cancer. You
Right. I
know?
mean, I could have had triple negative in both breasts or, lobular or some of those really terrible things, but I didn't.
Right. But it's still, so as blessed as you felt, as you said earlier, you still had cancer. It's still something to
Right.
deal with. Yeah, it's still something and it's important and it's life
And
changing.
every time you fill out a form, there it is,
Mm-hmm.
you know, because at my age, you end up going to a lot of doctors. It just seems like it's a ongoing thing. Everybody and their brother wants to see you every 6 months.
Oh, so this is the aftermath, a lot of doctor's appointments. So as we wrap it up and say our goodbyes for now anyway, we may pick a new theme and do another interview. Any last minute thoughts or anything you'd like to say for those who are listening?
I just think in the end, I was pretty lucky. I was lucky with my diagnosis, and I was lucky in the end about all of the sort of things I had to step over or step around or work out.
Mm-hmm.
But I've never been a shrinking violet. I've really always tried to stand up for myself.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what you have to do if you have cancer. You have to stand up for yourself. In the end, you're the one that matters.
Yeah.
The doctor's feelings, not the office staff, not the whoever,
Mm-hmm.
billing clerk or whatever. It's
Mm-hmm.
you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So true. Couldn't have been said better. Thank you. Thank you for coming today. Thank you for sharing.
I love you, Cindy. You're the best.